Shalom and welcome to Temple Talk from Jerusalem, Israel. Rabbi Chaim Richman here together with Yitzchak Reuven. Today, 16th day of the month of Iyar, the month of healing, 5779. It is May the 21st, 2019. On this week's Torah portion, here in the land of Israel, we are reading the ultimate, that is the concluding Torah portion of the book of Vayikra, Leviticus, Parashat Bechukotai. And if you are living in the diaspora, abroad, outside the land of Israel, you are reading Parashat Behar, which is the penultimate Torah portion of the book of Vayikra, and this disparity will continue for another few weeks. And today also is the 31st day of the counting of the Omer. That means that it is the level of Sefirat Shebenetzach. And Yitzchak, you know that today...
Sefirat Shebehod.
I'm sorry, Sefirat Shebehod. Phew.
Whew.
What do we know about Sefirat Shebehod?
Tiferet's a very beautiful quality, and as is Hod, Rabbi.
Let me read what we have, how we have described today's level of spiritual yearning, aspiration, and rectification, how we've described it in our short summary on our Facebook posting. And again, the idea of the counting of the Omer is such an unbelievable thing. It's such a blessing, such a precious opportunity that we have in this incredibly special, powerful, formative period of time between Passover and Shavuot, where we are literally shedding identities, shedding skins, shedding previous conceptions and accepted notions about ourselves, about our reality, about the way that we relate to each other and the way that we try to deal with our own emotions. It's a very emotive time because we are dealing with the divine emotive attributes, as it were, during this time. And again, this is all part of this bridge between Passover and Shavuot, this one long intermediary day festival, as we progress from that slave consciousness with which we exited Egypt on an immature spiritual level, represented by the barley offering that was brought to the temple on the 16th day of Nisan, the Omer, which is a measurement of barley, and the special commandment that we have in Leviticus 23 of counting the 7 complete weeks, seven days is 1 week, and 7 weeks to 49 days, corresponding to the 49th level of minus 49 that we started out with, as it were, in Egypt, in the level of impurity, coming up to the level of being able to stand at Mount Sinai, receive the Torah, receive our spiritual emancipation, as it were, our declaration of freedom to be a free people, to serve Hashem, to listen to His voice, which of course what the Torah portion of Bechukotai is all about. And this very, very special time of being able to work on our spiritual character traits, which are called the divine attributes that we refer to as the Sefirot. Again, Sefirat HaOmer, the counting of the Omer, same root, Samach Pei, Resh, same root as Sefer, which is book, because we're really writing the book of our lives. It's the same as Sipur, which is to tell a story, because we're telling the story of our lives. The same as Sapir, which is sapphire, because we're making every day shine like a precious jewel. Anyway, it's an amazing discipline to identify with the beautiful spiritual emanation every day, to try and learn from the sources that are available about what this all means, this count. It's not just, even the counting itself is just so moving and so exciting, because it's like we're counting with anticipation towards something that we're really looking forward to, which is the receiving of the Torah at Mount Sinai. It's like it's really happening. We're going to be there again. We're going to be receiving the Torah again. So on the one simple level, this idea of counting is like, who wouldn't be anticipating the most important event of their lives? And it really is like a wedding. It's called the wedding of the Jewish people and the Holy One, blessed be He, at Mount Sinai. But besides that simple level of the counting, like counting in anticipation, it's also, again, the counting of levels. a spiritual progression of trying to get right with ourselves. Anyway, I'm going on and on. I'm sorry.
It's okay.
Let me just read how we have described today's emanation. For those that are unfamiliar, there's this idea that there are refractions of the Shekhinah, of the way Hashem is relating to creation, and there is a certain idea of that doesn't in any way contradict or challenge the oneness of God. There's an idea of attributes through which God relates to creation. So here today, again, we said is called Tiferet Shebehod. The divine attribute shining forth today in the counting of the Omer is Tiferet Shebehod. We have defined Tiferet as a beautiful harmony composed of a balance between the two previous midot of Chesed, loving kindness, and Gvura, strength. 2 days ago, we spoke about the loving kindness of humility, explaining that we should not think so much of ourselves that our ego would prevent us from doing a kindness for someone else. Yesterday, regarding the strength of humility, we learned that a person has to think enough of oneself not to stand by quietly in the face of evil or allow others to be fooled, even by ourselves. Today's divine attribute of Tiferet Shebehod, which literally means, again, the beauty of humility. Today's divine attribute of Tiferet Shebehod calls upon us to reflect the balance, the beauty, the harmony of humility. And this harmony of kindness and strength is always the acid test. The goal, God willing, of today's balance of humility is for a person to feel and express compassion for others, always in the appropriate measure, always balanced and true. The Tiferet of Hod is to successfully navigate the balancing act of life, to really understand who we are, neither with an inflated ego nor with false modesty, to know who we are and how we fit into God's world. That insight and realization can only come about when we are operating with a true sense and a real sense of the humility born of a real connection to Hashem. Such humility will inform all our actions with Tiferet. So this is an example of where we're going with this whole concept of trying to relate to the spiritual dimension of the counting of the Omer, the divine attributes that are emanating, that are shining forth. It's basically like a radio dial wherein we are given the opportunity to fine-tune these very, very special kind of wavelengths that we employ in our everyday lives to relate to each other and to live our lives, except that we're not always honest with ourselves about our feelings. We're conflicted. We have agendas. We have ego, and the spiritual work that we do on a deep level, hopefully during these days, is really formative, and it goes hand in hand with the passage between Passover and Shavuot, getting ready to receive the Torah and to become truly free people.
We want to be in tune when the big day comes, so that all our notes ring true and we are in harmony with one another.
It's a very beautiful way of looking at it.
Very beautiful, yeah. You talked about fine-tuning. You mentioned a radio, and I understand what you're getting at, because you want to get that channel in just right. But there's also tuning an instrument in which you also are trying to get that perfect pitch where there's harmony and beauty. And that speaks humility as well.
So this is a very beautiful example of the depth of this whole concept. Like this week's sefira, which means it's counting, it's level, is called Hod, right?
Mm-hmm.
And Hod has it's a very beautiful way to describe to somebody who might be a newbie in trying to learn about this mystical concept of the rectifications that can be done in the nefesh of the person, in the soul of the person during the count of the Omer. What is this idea of Hod? It's one of the emanations of Hashem, as it were, and how he manifests, or how he relates to creation. Mm-hmm. So Hod has two definitions classically, which ostensibly seem to contradict each other. Hod, Hey Vav Daled, it means really majesty,
Right.
Not majesty, but splendor.
Splendor.
Something really radiant
Radiance.
with beauty, right?
Mm-hmm.
But hod also consistently means humility.
It's a modest beauty.
It's a modesty. So, but
It's the beauty of the bat melech, no? Isn't there a line?
kol kavod bat melech pnima, the beauty of the king's daughter is within. It's in other words, it's hidden from view. But the idea is that, one might think that there's a contradiction in terms between humility, which we generally think of as being someone that's being very self-effacing and very like low-keyed, and splendor, which is like do
over the top,
like radiant. But the beauty of what this concept is relating in the secret of the Hebrew and the secret of the teachings of our holy sages is that true humility is a splendor. It's a splendid thing. Because, and this is something that we've been discussing in our Facebook teachings about this level this week. People have a tendency, they might think that, humility is like weakness, like when a person acts that with humility, that they're weak, that they're a pushover, that somebody could take advantage of them. True humility is a reflection of Hashem. It's like the person understands who they are. They don't take more to their credit than they deserve, but yet they certainly assert themselves as being Hashem's, creation. But they bring everything back to Him. It's all a reflection of Him. In other words, false humility is a very big problem. When a person, acts like they're who am I? But they actually think, well, they certainly are someone. You know what I'm saying? But true humility is when a person realizes, I'm just Hashem's child. Everything that I do is from Him. It's a reflection of Him. And then that humility is healthy, and it's also radiant because it reflects back to Hashem. It's not taking something for myself that's not mine. It's recognizing that everything I have is really Hashem.
Like the reflection on the moon of the sun. Reflects very radiantly, but it's not its own light.
I find the whole period of time of the counting of the Omer is something we look forward to the whole year. It's just
we count up as opposed to counting down. Usually you count down to something that you're looking forward to. Last day of school. But we're counting up to the first day of the rest of our lives.
And that expression, down for the count, it doesn't apply at all.
It's up for the count.
Counting up. And the thing is, it really is, for people that really are into it, it is like an amazing journey. And it is just this incredible time of calibration and really like this deep introspection where I'm really thinking about my motives and my agenda and how I relate to other people. And as we see in many of the sefirot and many of the way that at least we've translated in our teachings, it has to do with what I tell myself and what I think I am, and really honing and fine-tuning that self-image so that it's real and so that it's honest. And so that my dealings with other people are honest. And so it's a lot of times it's about how I am poised to deal with my own yetzer hara, with my own negativity, with my own side of evil, as it were. Today in history, Yitzchak.
Yes.
I wonder if you're aware.
16th of the month of Iyar.
16th of the month of Iyar. In addition to it being I believe the day that the Dachau concentration camp was liberated in 1945, it is also way before that, back in the year 2448 of creation, that is to say 1313 BCE. Today, this is the very day that the manna began to descend for our forefathers in the desert.
Wow.
Because our sages teach us how they had an exact amount of provisions, basically the matzah that they took out from Egypt, for a certain amount of meals. And that was used up today. And so everything that we read in the Torah about the manna descending, it began today. So that is pretty amazing. And I'll go back to Parshat Bishalach for a moment, to the book of Exodus, where we read about the manna, right? In chapter 16, Hashem said to Moshe, "Behold, I shall rain down on you food from heaven. Let the people go out and pick each day's portion on its day, so that I can test them, whether they will follow my teaching or not. And it shall be that on the sixth day, when they prepare what they bring, it will be double what they pick every day." So here we have the whole incredible description of the experience of the manna that we have discussed, you and I, many times over the years, connecting it to all the secrets of livelihood, and how the holy sages like the Baal Shem Tov would show us the allusions in the Torah portion of the manna to the challenge of a person's livelihood, the main challenge of a person's livelihood, the belief, the understanding that it's all coming from Hashem.
Mm-hmm.
And how when it comes to the manna, the right amount came down for each person, for each family. There's also a teaching that our sages share with us, that the process of gathering the manna was a process that was either as easy or as difficult, commensurate to the person's spiritual level.
Mm-hmm.
That people who were on a very high level of righteousness, they didn't have to go very far. They basically came out the door of their tent and maybe yawned in their bathrobe, and just like you pick up the bottle of milk that was delivered, or the newspaper, there it was by the door. And then people who were like in the middle ground a little bit, like depends what day you catch them. They had to walk a little bit.
Market.
They had to walk a little bit, like down to the neighborhood corner store.
Yeah.
The people who were really not really how do we say, not really up to their game. I don't want to say anybody's bad, but they were they had to walk, had to jog a little bit.
They couldn't order on Alibaba, huh?
Right. And not only that, but what happens if you took more than you needed?
Mm-mm.
You took more than you needed and you tried to hoard it. It rotted.
Yeah.
And that is symbolic of the whole idea of the obsession that some people have with money itself, and with goods, and with the physical goods itself.
Possessions.
It's like we eat to serve Hashem. We eat to be strong. We eat in thanks to everything He gave us, and the food really represents again our physicality and our lust for wealth. And when they tried to save too much of it, it rotted. And so He's basically spoon feeding them this bread from heaven, and we read here in the parasha this unbelievable verse that they said to each other, "Manhu, ki lo yadu mahu."
Mm-hmm.
They called it manna. In English it's called manna, and in Hebrew it's called man, which literally means, what is it?
What the heck?
They said to each other, "What is it?" They didn't know what it was.
Yeah.
And this verse is very amazing to me, because it's
But
basically saying
after a month of eating matzah, they were ready to try something new.
After everything that they went through, and after the entire experience and up until this moment, and now Hashem is actually feeding them, they're still saying
what's going on here?
What is it? I don't know. Do you know? Oh, I don't know. And I think that's the challenge of all of our lives also, to see Hashem at every moment, and to realize His interaction with us, and to give Him the credit, like we're talking about in this sefira of Hod, and to realize that it's Him.
That's who it is. That's what it is.
He's the one behind everything.
I have a question, Rabbi. How do we know it was the 16th of Iyar that it first began to?
There is an exact reckoning of the amount of meals that they had with them, and it's quite clear to our sages that today is the day. It's been marked for a long time. Yitzchak.
Yes.
Torah portion of Bechukotai, which we're reading this week.
Here in the land of Israel.
Here in the land of Israel. Begins with beautiful lessons.
Oh, yeah. Starts out great.
Beautiful blessings. And also includes a difficult portion that's referred to as the admonition, the Torah. A series of punishments, as it were, for abandoning the Torah,
right.
abandoning the way of Hashem. It's
I would say a series of consequences or ramifications.
Yes, that is yes. It's commonly referred to as punishment. It's much more accurate and proper to refer to it as consequences. It's not Hashem bringing something on us. It's not a God that's vindictive or that's gunning for us. That is doing a tit for tat. But it is the natural consequence of our removing ourselves from our spiritual source, really. But I want to go deeper than that, and I hope to in this week's Torah portion, our video lesson. It's because it is a very great challenge for people, and I want to like to say, wait for the movie. Yeah. So I want to wait for the movie, and I want to discuss it in this week's video lesson. It is the difficult thing about it is that
you can read the book first, though.
Yes, here is the book, and I don't mean to say don't look at the book. I want you to look at the book. But just in terms of the time that we have, the difficult thing about it is the feeling that people have of vulnerability, and that Hashem is basically threatening, and that it's a very difficult read, the things that are described here, and it's all very, very intimately connected with the land. Just like last week in the Torah portion of Bahar, and those that are reading it this week, begins with the whole concept of the sabbatical and jubilee years because of our intense and intimate bond with this land of Israel. Much of the tochacha, of the admonition here in Parshat Bechukotai, not only refers to our treatment of the land, but it refers to the treatment that we will receive, God forbid, in lands of our enemies because of being expelled from the land. So our relationship with the land of Israel is a very central theme. And of course, it's quite amazing that this is the climax and the ending of the book of Vayikra,
right,
which has been totally focused on Hashem's presence amongst us and on the perception of reality that we need to encourage for ourselves, of our closeness to Hashem and of the state of holiness that we aspire to. And I'd like to talk a little bit about the blessings with which the parasha begins that are so beautiful, and that's what we shall do as soon as we come back. There's the music, with your permission, of course, because it's your half. So,
okay.
I hope we'll meet here in just a few seconds here. God willing, stay with us. Temple Talk.
Shalom and welcome back to Temple Talk. This is Yitzchak Reuven with Rabbi Chaim Richman here in Jerusalem, Israel. Today is the 16th day of the month of ER 5779, the day that the manna began to fall. It is the 21st day of May 2019. It is the 31st day of the counting of the Omer, and as we have been talking about this week's parasha, at least here in the land of Israel, we are reading Parashat Bechukotai, the closing parasha of the book of Leviticus, Vayikra. If you're in the diaspora, you'll be reading the Parashat Bahar this Shabbat. And as the rabbi pointed out, that discrepancy will continue for a number of weeks, even I think a couple of months this year. Very unusual situation. But bear with us as we talk about Bechukotai, which the rabbi was in the middle of saying. So I just want to introduce some thoughts before we get back to that, Rabbi. One is that you mentioned that the admonitions are very related to the land of Israel and, of course, being in exile from the land of Israel. And one reason why that, I believe, comes up here at this particular point in time in terms of the Torah readings is that, again, the children of Israel are getting ready to enter into the land of Israel, and God is giving them this message, a sort of a sobering message before they enter. Of course, what we'll find out is in the book of Numbers, which we begin a week from today, if a week from this Shabbat, is, of course, the sin of the spies and the extended 39 years in the desert. But that hasn't happened yet. So we're on the eve of entering into the land. And so this is a very important message that the Torah is relating before Israel's entry into the land. And Rabbi, you want to pick up where you left off?
Listen, again, the parasha is difficult to understand, and I readily admit that. And I'm looking forward to trying to relate to it in our video this week, because I just need some expanses here. It is about our conception of Hashem and our relationship with Him. The whole idea that everything hinges on here is the fact that we relate to Hashem in casualness, in keri, which means casualness, like a happenstance, you know. As you said, it's very deeply connected with our relationship with the land, and I have to say something here. Also, it describes these, like you say, let's not call them punishments, but consequences of our abandoning Hashem's way, and the ultimate aspect of this punishment, the exile. And then when we're exiled, the land will be appeased for its sabbaticals during all the years of its desolation. We're in the land of your foe. Then the land will rest in a period of its sabbaticals. In other words, the desecration of the sabbatical, the bizayon, how do you say that? The disgrace of not keeping the sabbatical properly is what brought this all about. In other words, our lack of appreciation and reverence, as it were, for the land of Israel is what brought this whole thing about. But I have to say this one thing, and pardon me for not being politically correct, but here, so Hashem says, you will become lost among the nations. The land of your foes will devour you. And several times the verses refer to you being in the land of your enemy. And that's the exile. When they're in the land of their enemies, when they're in the land of your foes. And in the end, Hashem promises, despite all this, while they'll be in the land of their enemies, I will not have been revolted by them, nor will I have rejected them to obliterate them, to annul my covenant with them, for I am Hashem their God. I will remember for them the covenant of the ancients, and the whole idea of the promise to the forefathers, and the promise that we will be brought back to the land of Israel. But, you know, the thing is, everywhere in the Torah, the lands of our enemies, the lands of our foes, are the lands of exile. And the exile is considered to be a punishment, or you want to call it a consequence of our misactions. But the idea is, being outside the land of Israel is not a natural state. I mean, goodness, it is the climax of all the terrible things that are described here in the Torah portion of Bechukotai is when we are in the land of our foes, when we are in the land of our enemies. That's the exile. And thinking about the anti-Semitism that is all the rage today, that is politically correct, that everything has changed so drastically, or not changed, but just been revealed in a new and improved format. You know that it's just boogieing in public without any shame. It's just unabashed anti-Semitism. You know, it's not anti-Israel. It's anti-Semitism. It's totally interchangeable. If you're against Zionism, you're against the Jews. It's all the same now, and it is being fronted and supported by major political parties, whether it's the Democratic Party in America or the Labour Party in Great Britain. And there's all these anti-Semitic acts that are going on every single day in so many countries, including physical attacks on Jews. So I'm reading last week about these Chabad houses that were torched in the Boston area. It's just absolutely incredible to me. For Chabad in Needham, Massachusetts, where my father lived, and where I spent several years of my boyhood, to be for a Chabad house, for a synagogue, a shul, to be set on fire. And of course, the people live in the Chabad house, so it's basically attempted murder. and this is going on. And I got to tell you again, I'm sorry for saying this because I don't, but the reaction of the Jewish people, and in Poway, the wonderful rabbi who spoke so beautifully, and they talk about their appreciation to the community. They talk about their appreciation to the law enforcement forces, law enforcement, and keeping everything safe, and they talk about staying here and making a stand, and we're not going to be afraid. We're not going to go, and the law enforcement will take care of us, and we're just going to spread light and all this kind of thing. And I'm like, I don't understand this. This is exactly what the Torah is describing. This is the land of our enemies. It's the land of our foes. And how do you read this? How do you read this when every single mitzvah in the Torah was given so that when we come into the land of Israel, we will walk upright as a people in our own land according to the will of God, and thus bring light into the world. And the lands of the exile is synonymous with death, with punishment. And it's not. And nobody ever told you. God never told us in the Torah that we are instructed to bring light into the world by living in other lands and setting an example. We're supposed to set the example for the world here. And so, I'm sure. I mean, I'm trying not to follow these things because it's too much for me. But I'm sure that these anti-Semitic attacks in Massachusetts, the synagogue burning, the arsonists attacking the Beit Chabad, I'm sure it's being blamed on Trump. I'm absolutely sure it's being blamed on Trump by some people. But the only problem is there's no Trump supporters in Massachusetts. I think they lynched the last of them. I mean, there's one or two that you and I know personally. We won't reveal their identities. But there's basically no Trump supporters in Massachusetts, so you can't blame it on Trump. But you could blame it on the Democratic Party because, after all, that's what Massachusetts is all about. Mm-hmm. And the American Jews, they're like clueless. They're just like somnambulating through the greatest crisis that we've faced. Basically, the level of anti-Semitism is basically like 1939 in Germany, and they're all on board with the Democratic Party. But where is this anti-Semitism coming from if it's not being broadcast from people like the freshman congresswomen that are using every single opportunity to knock Israel, to try and separate America from Israel, to blame everything on Israel.
To knock the American Jews as well.
So there you go, like Parashat Bechukotai, like 101.
It's a wake-up call.
Anyway, I digress from the blessings. Let's start with the blessings. Enough about the curses. The blessings of Parashat Bechukotai are so succinct, as opposed to the very great detail that Hashem goes into here in the Torah, describing the admonition and what will happen. The blessings are basically like an outline of every good thing that possibly a person needs as a toolkit for living a good life.
Maybe there's so much, the admonitions are in such great detail in light of what you were just saying, because it takes so long for people to figure out what these are admonitions, that they're in the wrong place. You're in the wrong place, my friend. I think you better leave. Go back to where you belong.
Parsha begins in chapter 26 of the book of Leviticus in verse 3. If you will follow my decrees and observe my commandments and perform them, then I will provide you rains in their time, when the land will give its produce and the tree of the field will give its fruit. Your threshing will last until the vintage, and the vintage will last until the sowing. You will eat your bread to satiety, and you will dwell securely in your land. You know what? These words are drenched with meaning, and there's so much to say about everything here. First of all, the parsha begins with the words, Bechukotai telechu v'at mitzvotai tishmaru. If you will follow my decrees and you will observe my commandments. And this is a very famous question, because, what is Bechukotai? What is my decrees? Because it's not talking about the mitzvah, because the next words are, if you will observe my commandments. Right. So what does it mean if you will follow my decrees? And our sages tell us this is referring to Torah study, to how we have to be immersed in the study of Torah in order to know Hashem, in order to translate His will into action. We have to connect everything to Torah, which is like the manifestation of Hashem's will in this world, and basically the counterpart of living in the land of Israel. And these verses talk about the produce of the land, the bounty of the land, which is synonymous with our getting along with Hashem, and with our tranquility in the land of Israel. The land of Israel only gives forth its fruit when the Jewish people are here. We talked about that last week in Parshat Bahar.
That's why when we're not here, it gets to catch up on its sabbatical years, because there's nothing happening.
So I have a question. Like we talk about the deal of the century. We talk about all the ceasefire, not ceasefire deals with Hamas and all, and paying the terrorist families and all the things that we do here to try to live another day. And here the verse says very specifically, if you'll follow my decrees and observe my commandments and perform them, etc., 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 and you will dwell securely in your land. That seems pretty simple.
Yeah. Pretty simple formula.
I mean, I don't know if Jared Kushner would agree. I don't know exactly what plan they came up with. It hasn't been announced yet, but this seems pretty clear. In fact, it goes on to say, "I will provide peace in the land."
Mm-hmm. This is the deal of the millennium.
Of eternity.
The eternity, yeah.
I will provide peace in the land, and you will lie down with none to frighten you.
I like that.
That is such a beautiful promise. Like, what more could you ask for? No alarms, no locks, no metal grates on your windows and doors. I will provide peace in the land, and you will lie down with none to frighten you. I will cause wild beasts to withdraw from the land. We know who they are. And a sword will not cross your land. You will pursue your enemies, and they will fall before you by the sword. 5 of you will pursue 100, and 100 of you will pursue 10,000, and your enemies will fall before you by the sword. I will turn my attention to you. I will make you fruitful and increase you, and I will establish my covenant with you. And it's just so amazing what Hashem is promising here. You will eat very old grain and remove the old to make way for the new. That is such a powerful verse. You will remove the old to make room for the new. Usually the old is the best, but Hashem is saying you're going to have so much, you won't even have room for it. You're going to have to take away the old to make room for the new. And you know what? I see that being fulfilled, that blessing, in every aspect of Israeli technology and research and development, and the speed with which we are bringing more and more into the world, more and more new into the world. I will place my sanctuary among you. Now you're talking. And my spirit will not reject you. I will walk among you, and I will be God unto you, and you will be a people unto me. That's the whole purpose of him being God to us, is so that we'll be his people. I am Hashem, your God, who took you out of the land of Egypt from being their slaves.
I like it. I'm in, Rabbi. Where do I sign up? A parallel to this whole blessing and then admonition we're talking about earlier, and I saw it referred to a number of times on the internet. Earlier, that last Saturday night was the final performances of Eurovision, which was hosted this year in Israel, because last year Israel's singer
Netta
Barzilai won the Eurovision, so Israel got to host. Now,
and that it wasn't even simple letting us host, because of course we're Israel.
Right. Eurovision is a huge thing. Like hundreds of millions of people watch it. Don't ask me why. The music is awful.
Really, the music is so... You know what? Don't whisper it. You know what? This is our show. We've had this show for like 16 years. We can say what we want. Folks, the music is disgusting.
Wait, it's awful. But...
Of course, it's personal taste.
Now, it's a huge... quote, honor for Israel to be hosting it.
Oh, man.
And of course, it's a tremendous, quote, opportunity to bring in tourism and to advertise.
And to desecrate the Sabbath.
It's my half, Rabbi. Give me a moment here. So, and all the different groups from all different countries, I don't know, there's 24 countries, I think, including Australia. I don't know how they got to be part of the Europe. I don't know how we're part of Europe. That doesn't make sense either. But they all send back they all advertise with a video of themselves somewhere in Israel. So it's wonderful, wonderful PR. It's wonderful advertising for Israel. The hope is that it'll bring in many, many hundreds and thousands and millions of tourists in the future. As it turned out, they say there were between 5,000 and 10,000 people came from outside of Israel to participate, to watch. Okay, and Israel had to invest many, many, many millions of shekels in order to, create the hall and to spiff everything up and to accommodate people, et cetera, et cetera. It was a big
Expecting
success.
a really big influx in tourism, right?
Well, I'm saying it was
were
between
expecting.
5 and 10,000 people came from Europe, I guess, to watch it.
No, but they were expecting like tens of thousands.
Well, I don't know. I don't know what they're expecting, but that's what they say came. Okay, tremendous investment, and it all went well. Actually, it all went well. Madonna performed, apparently really out of tune. She performed in the final.
It went well when Madonna slipped a whole political statement in, which was
Who
absolutely
cares?
forbidden.
You know what? I'm so sick of
I know you're going to talk about Iceland. I'm
Rabbi,
sorry. I'm getting upset
people,
here.
help me here, people. Help me here. You'll have your chance unless I talk down the clock here. And I might just do that. Ooh, so watch it. Now, this Wednesday evening is the 33rd day of the counting of the Omer. This is what I wanted to talk about. Now, known here as Lag BaOmer, which is a celebration. It's the Hilula. It's the anniversary of the death of Rabbi Shimon Bar Yochai, who lived.
Great Talmudic sage, who
Great
was the
Talmudic
first
sage.
sage who publicly taught the secrets of the Torah.
Right, and the Zohar is in his name. It's his creation, and by the way, he was of all our sages. He was the most critical of the Romans. He said, we don't need their baths, we don't need their roads, we don't need their entertainment, we don't need their Eurovision, we don't need any of it. None of it's good for us. He was quite serious about that. Now, they're expecting on Lag BaOmer, many people go up to Har Meron, to Mount Meron, which is outside of Tzfat.
To his tomb site.
To his tomb. And they're expecting this year, based on past years, 500,000 people, including over 80,000 from outside of Israel. So 80,000 people are coming tourists.
Just to go to the tomb,
Just
the
to go
grave
to the
of the
tomb
great
of this
sage Rabbi Shimon.
sage.
It is an amazing experience. It is unparalleled in Israeli culture. It's become greater and greater numbers every year, and they all come to be at the site of the tomb of the great Rabbi Shimon on the anniversary of his passing, because there's an idea that on the day of the passing of a great and holy person, there's a great illumination in the world, and it's a day of joy. It's a day of joy because his light is shining ever brighter, and in his merits comes the redemption. And it's just a whole idea of the power of the righteous even after their death.
So if you want to think about the blessings, which Bechukotai opens with, and they're short and they're succinct, but they're all-encompassing. And then the admonitions, which go on and on and on until you finally get it, that you shouldn't be there, you should be here, and you should be respecting and loving this land and respecting and following the ways of God. Here's another way of looking at it. You can either do Eurovision, which include, as you mentioned before, Chilul Shabbat, desecration of the Shabbat, and these horrible acts and political poison, all for what? Or the beauty of honoring our sages and sharing that light.
Showing reverence and for the
reverence
Torah and how much
to the
we
Torah
cherish it.
and to the
So
land
you're
of
saying
Israel.
10,000 people went to Eurovision, to that dud, that flop, that that ridiculous, and then you're saying 500,000 people will be here in this little
For
tiny
one night,
hamlet,
for one evening and
for
day.
one night in the north of Israel, a backwater road,
Sleeping in
including
tents or
80,000
under the
people coming
stars.
from abroad just to make that pilgrimage, all to bask in the presence, spiritual presence of Rabbi Shimon Bar Yochai. Gosh, it's like Eurovision versus Lag BaOmer.
Exactly. Yeah, that's what Bechukotai is all about. Bechukotai ends after the admonitions and after God reassures us that he will never abandon his people, but he will ultimately bring us back, as he has done in our generation, to the land of Israel. The concluding paragraphs of the book of Leviticus have to do with making a vow, a neder, and bringing a korbanot, offerings. And again, this always happens, I think, it's a pattern in the Torah. After Israel's been admonished or Israel's screwed up some way, the Torah always comes back to say there always is a tomorrow, and there's always going to be the Beit HaMikdash. And
It's
Israel,
like a divine kiss. It's like a
yeah,
wink from Hashem saying,
it's all good. It's all good.
you're on your way. You're on your way to the promised land.
You
You're on
may
your
have
way to the
slipped,
holy
but
temple.
God believes in us.
And as far as what I was saying before, and I didn't mean to sound harsh, but I'm confronting this this terrible rise of anti-Semitism in the world, and I'm looking at the reaction of the Jewish communities, which is like, we're going to be strong. Thank you, law enforcement, for protecting us. Thank you, detectives, and we're going to be here. We're going to shine a light. But excuse me, these are the lands of our foes, the lands of our enemies. This is part of the admonition, and like, really, the blessing is to be in the land of Israel.
And a beautiful, humble thing to do would be to get on a plane, make Aliyah, come to Israel, shine your light from here.
That's the splendor of humility.
And there's the music. I must have said something right. Rabbi, it's been great.
Nice to see you, Yitzchak.
Good to see you and hear you. Through all the noise.
Wishing everyone great joy in the countdown of the Omer and Lag BaOmer.
Lag BaOmer Sameach. Thanks for being with us. Temple Talk.